Art has been a part of Schiphol for years on end. Sometimes obvious, sometimes subtle, these works inspire the millions of travelers who visit our airport every year on their journeys, whether they are arriving or departing. This podcast series, Art Moments Schiphol, introduces you to the stories behind the artworks, guided by the creators themselves. Let's take a look, shall we? In this episode, we keep our feet firmly on the ground, yet our eyes travel upwards to the ceiling of the airport's departure hall. There, floating in the air and made of hard steel, something appears to be flying. This is the story behind Flying Fish, a sculpture by Carel Visser.
It's a sculpture about the size of a bus. It's made of sheet iron, plates that have been bent into the rough shape of a fish. It's mainly red, black and grey.
Harm Visser is the son of Carel Visser. He lives in Toulouse, France, and has managed his father's artworks since his passing in 2015.
My name is Harm Visser and I'm the son of Carel Visser. I live on a remote farm at the foothills of the Pyrenees, and I'm now retired, except that I manage my father's collection. I make sure that works held in public collections, such as those owned by the Dutch state, are preserved or restored when needed, and I really enjoy doing that.
Heavy as lead, strong as iron, yet somehow it seems to move. The Flying Fish defies all expectations and was installed in 1993 in honor of the construction of the new terminal. It is 4 meters high, 4 meters wide, 10 meters long, and weighs no less than 1,150 kilos. A steel fish that doesn't sink, but floats. Such contrasts are common in Carel Visser's work, and to better understand this, we asked Harm to share the story behind the sculpture. The story Harm shares with us takes us far back in time, not just to his father, but 2 generations further. Through the Visser bloodline runs a love for a material that is both flexible and robust: steel.
My grandfather and great-grandfather owned a factory that made water pipes and water towers at the start of the 20th century. My father often wandered around there. They used all kinds of materials, but mostly iron, working with iron runs in the family. It's almost in our blood. We weren't too impressed by wood. But iron, that was something special, something that sparked ideas, especially the smell and the raw material itself. It really influenced us deeply. My father especially loved it.
Working in his grandfather's factory, Carel developed an affinity for metal. But more than that, amidst the raw steel and hard labor, he found the seed of his creativity, a world where strength and imagination could coexist. Alongside iron, lead, and shining copper, a new fascination, no, an obsession was born: art. He also developed a sixth sense for recognizing art that would endure.
How do you know whether a particular artwork is truly good or will become something significant? My father had that gift. He started very young. As a teenage schoolboy, he would work at my grandfather's factory, earn a little money, and immediately spend it on a painting or another piece of art. Sometimes he bought a painting even if it meant he couldn't afford food for a month. He would just eat with friends or acquaintances. Sometimes he even traded his bicycle to buy a painting. He was only 15, 16 or 17 at the time, and he kept doing that throughout his life. The goal wasn't to make money from it. No, that came naturally later. For him, a work of art was like a little plant. He had to nurture it, and eventually it would grow and bloom. That was his drive. And he clearly felt it was very important to be one of the first to discover a new plant.
This sharp sense of aesthetics, of what was truly beautiful, became a red thread through Carel's life, and therefore also through Harm's.
On one hand, it was something fun. We were raised to look closely at everything, not just art, but anything. Pens, cars, walking sticks, shoes. A certain standard of quality was always emphasized. My father had a deeply ingrained aesthetic sense. It covered everything, from houses to cathedrals, from streets to cars to everyday objects. That made life complicated at times, because you can't easily find the best shoes, the best cars, or the best walking sticks. No one can afford to have only the very best of everything, but that high standard stayed with us all the same.
Through this lens of aesthetics, Carel viewed the world. He saw beauty everywhere, especially in nature. The sky, the water, the fish, the birds, the horses. But alongside that admiration for nature, there was always his fascination with metal. Metal offered a way to capture nature's power, combined with mechanical precision, which ultimately led to his iconic abstract sculptures. But when his children asked, "Dad, what do you actually do?" it wasn't easy to explain.
And I remember so clearly one Wednesday morning, so we had no school. My brother and I asked him, "Yeah, what do you actually do, Dad?" "My friend's father rides his bike to work at the bank every morning. Another friend's father is a plumber." "But what about you?" My father said, "I'm a sculptor. I make sculptures, drawings, anything that interests me." "So you're an artist. Can you really draw?" He took a piece of paper and a pencil, and with just a few quick lines, he sketched a beautiful galloping horse, full of motion. We ran to our mother and asked for scissors. We cut out the horse and asked her to sew it onto our sweaters. Then we went back to my father and we told him, "Why don't you make more of this kind of understandable art? You'd probably sell a lot more." There was a moment of silence. Then he said, "Look, for 500 or 600 years, people have painted still lifes, fruits, vegetables so perfectly and realistically that you can't add anything to them anymore. What interests me is expressing the essence of something like a dolphin in a different world, a different dimension, a dream or a thought. That's what I want to do with my sculptures."
In search of essence. By combining two very different worlds, the mechanical and the organic, Carel created space, a space for the viewer to find their own meaning. Where words sometimes fall short, Carel built his own language, in iron.
He created a language in iron that was entirely his own. In his career, he closed one chapter after another, or not literally breaking his pencils, but mentally, and started anew again and again. And yet, despite the changes, his handwriting stayed the same. That's rare. I know only one other artist who did something similar. Picasso. Not being afraid to leave behind one story and start a new one. Many artists spend their whole lives perfecting a single song. My father created hundreds. What mattered to him was quality, that it was good. You can immediately recognize his touch, a kind of strictness, a demanding attitude toward himself, always striving for perfection.
Looking at flying fish, you see a playful assembly of steel plates, black, grey, red, shaped into a fish. It seems improvised. This freedom in form is reminiscent of many of Carel Visser's other works, but even though it feels free, this freedom was carefully planned. Harm recalls a moment when his father asked for his help welding a sculpture.
Later in life, he had trouble with his hands. One day he came to me and he asked if I could weld them for him. Of course, I said yes. He told me exactly where each piece should go and whether to weld it from the inside or outside. At one point, I suggested, if you weld the next piece on the opposite side, it'll balance better. Immediately, I heard his booming voice through the welding mask. "Who's the artist here? You or me?" He wasn't angry. He was simply letting me know there was no improvisation here. He had already imagined each sculpture fully in his mind, like a photograph. Each piece represented a sculpture he had already designed, sometimes months in advance.
Flying fish is not a lifelike depiction. It's not a still life. It's an invitation to dream. As your eyes drift towards the ceiling, your mind is free to wander. The artwork doesn't ask for understanding, it asks for experience. And that experience will be different for everyone.
I would say, look at it, let your imagination run free. See what associations arise while looking at the sculpture. Step into a dream world, even if only for a minute, that's enough. If you have more time, even better. In today's world, it's harder to take the time to pause and really look. But if you do, it's like exploring new cuisines. Belgian, French, Italian, Spanish. It enriches your life. Art can do the same. You can stay with the familiar meat and potatoes every day, or you can explore and expand your world.
Art doesn't have to provide answers. It's allowed to leave us in wonder. Carel Visser showed us that even steel can seem light. His work, Flying Fish, doesn't just soar through the air at Schiphol. It soars through the boundaries of our imagination. Thank you for listening to this episode of Art Moments Schiphol. Curious about other artworks at Schiphol? Check out the other episodes in this series, like Real Time by Maarten Baas. I wish you a pleasant journey.